Good morning or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's HIS Talk webinar, Increase Referrals and Patient Satisfaction with a Smarter Find a Doc web search. It's brought to you by Find Technologies and HealthWise. I'm Lori from HIS Talk and I'll be moderating. We have two speakers today. First up will be Keith Belton. Keith is the Vice President of Marketing at Find Technologies. Joining Keith will be Joseph Schneider, MD. Dr. Schneider is the retired Senior Vice President, CHIO at Indiana University Health and VP and CMIO at Baylor Scott & White. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Keith.
Great. Thank you very much, Lori, and good morning, good afternoon to all of you. It's great to have you all join us, and we're looking forward to some spirited Q&A at the end. So we've got 4 agenda items today. The first that Lori has so nicely provided is the intros, and we'll talk a little bit about the objectives in a second. We're going to have, it's great to have Dr. Schneider here joining us to present from both a clinician and also as the patient perspective, some of the challenges that all of you who are building websites that are consumer friendly face, in specifically related to clinical taxonomy. I'll provide as non-commercial an overview as I can briefly on Find, and then Lori will ably steer us through some Q&A. So we've got 3 objectives today that we wanted to cover. So first is to discuss some of the challenges and benefits in the challenge of matching patients with clinicians. And in that same vein, there are also other folks who do matching, including referring clinicians and also patient access teams. Describe how a taxonomy is critical, really the absolute base capability for Find a Doctor web searches. And then provide a brief overview on how one particular strategy that is deploying a provider information management platform can help improve that Find a Doctor search capability. So with this, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Joe Schneider, who is here with me to talk about some perspectives he has. Joe?
Great, thank you very much, Keith. As Keith mentioned, I'm a former CMIO, Chief Health Information Officer, but I'm also a patient, and what I want to run you through is some of the challenges and some of regarding patient search and finding a doctor, and then also some suggestions as to how you can make your sites friendlier. So I just want to start out by reminding everybody that for about the past 15 years, here's how we buy our airline tickets. There we, hang on a second, we're getting advancing here. There we go. Here's how we bank, and here's how we buy our products. But sadly, here's how we still find a doctor. A lot of times it's word of mouth and ask a friend, ask a doctor. We look at website descriptions that really don't help us all that much. And we're forced to use unfriendly search systems that will find someone, but oftentimes they're not the type of doctor that we want. So we can do better, and I would say we have to do better. 80% of hospital appointments are preceded by a hospital website visit. Obviously, not all of those are searches, but many of them are. So a little bit of background, I got into this area by as a CMIO, Chief Health Information Officer, I'm very interested in the patient, making sure that our patients have all the tools that basically engage and empower them. When the Find folks who I've known for years connected with me regarding helping them on the clinical side of Find a Doctor web searches, that was a great opportunity to combine both of these. So let's take a look at a typical Find a Doc website. And here we have something that has a bunch of boxes for input. In the middle, you'll see one that says specialty or doctor name, city or zip code, and maybe if you're reasonably computer savvy, you can figure out what to put in those. Let's try this out and say, what specialty should we choose? Well, we'll click in that specialty or doctor name spot, and this is what appears. Now, actually, this appears in vertically. I took the individual screenshot, so it's scroll, 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 scroll. And you have to speak the language of medicine in order to do this. And even more complex, and you may not be able to see this on the screen, but there's a thing called elbow orthopedic surgery. So if I have a tennis elbow, I have to know that I look under elbow orthopedic surgery. Now, by the way, the right doctor might also be under orthopedic sports medicine, which is another choice, or way over on the right, or I should say all the way down, about 3 pages down, under the category sports medicine. And I happen to know this organization, and all of those searches would give you different doctors. It's not like it's the same choice. So it's terribly complex, so we don't want to do that. Well, the FIND group, our co-sponsors today, actually did a study of this back in 2017. They looked at 750 different healthcare systems, and here's what they found. 80% started with a screen with only search boxes, much like what we just saw. The average number of search boxes was 5, but they ranged from 1 to 13. Most of those sites had no second level filter. So once you made a choice, you couldn't refine it any further. And most of those sites actually had no natural language support. I would say in terms of like autofill, for example, where you start typing something and it starts to complete. So that's on the search side. On the results side, those sites provided a wide range of data, anywhere between 1 and 17 fields, and common and important things like we accept your insurance, or we are accepting new patients, or what are your office hours were often missing. Yes, some displayed their results in PDF, sadly. Multimedia such as pictures, video, interactive tools were pretty rare, and more importantly, missing on virtually all the websites was, why do you want to see a doctor? And this got driven home to me perhaps about 6 months ago, where my sister was visiting my elderly mother. That's my mom on the right there. And she sent me a picture of her eye, or at least the skin around her eye, and it was very, very, very red. And I think in my case, my sister was relying upon a physician to help her navigate this field. But I think many of you on the call and many of us have had the situation where there is no physician to do the interpretation, and trying to figure out why do you need to see a doctor is terribly important in a physician search. So that brings us to the concept of what should the ideal search tool do? Now, the ideal search tool for me is like the Holy Grail. I haven't quite found it yet, but I think we're getting closer in some cases. So the very first thing you would do is you'd narrow the selection by identifying what's the problem. And that's where taxonomy is going to come in. We'll talk more about clinical taxonomy later on, because we need to be able to take what the patient wants to say, red skin, and translate that into something that a doctor treats, for example, rash. But that's not at all simple. And like I said, we will talk about it later. Another question we want to see is, does this person, has she already seen other doctors? Does she need a second opinion? Sort of where is she in her journey in the healthcare system? And then, of course, we want to match what I call the basic demographics and logistical issues. I've listed some of them there, but there's really quite a number of them. So let's go searching on a more progressive website. And just a reminder, this is not the Holy Grail, but it's a little closer to it. So one of the concepts that I want to talk about today is really start simple, but provide information and choices. So here we have a website, a lot of white space, which is really helpful for readability, where right off the bat, we can see this is about finding a doctor that's right for you. We are asked to choose between primary care specialist and surgeon. Like I said, this isn't quite the holy grail. We do have the ability to put in the doctor's name if we know it. But importantly, on the upper right-hand or in the middle right-hand side, you'll see that there's 2,780 doctors that meet this criteria. Of course, we haven't put any filters in. So what we're looking at is the whole, this is the complete panel of doctors. They're all, if you were to, since we have a screenshot here, but if you were to scroll down, yes, there are 2,785 doctors showing up beneath this. But that's not important here. The important thing is the feedback that we're given to the person who's searching. And then also very importantly is the need assistance. This is where you can get a human being. We've grayed out the number there, the phone number there, but that's where you would put that. So our second screen, we've put in the word specialist, so we're starting to build out things, and you'll see that when we put in the word specialist, we got to 2,362. This particular system is a highly specialist-oriented healthcare system. But I want you to look in the middle of the page where in the blue it says accepting and choose your type of insurance, located near, and then on the next line, I prefer, who speaks and treats. These are words that we would all use in our natural speaking, and they help the patient customer figure out what it is that you're looking for in that box instead of having to guess. So the next thing is we want to add second level filtering. So we've put in, on this screen, we've put in the word dermatology, and we found that we've dropped it to 26 docs at this point. Again, the 26 would be listed below. Now we have made the assumption here that the patient knows that dermatologist treats red skin. And we're going to relax that in a few moments, but but I wanted to show how the 26 is immediately shown to you. By the way, there's an important button called Clear All, which allows you to get back to the beginning if you haven't gotten to the right spot. The next part, and this is where where we're not quite the holy grail on this website, is we want the patient to be able to put in the word red skin and to be able to narrow the doctors who treat that, because not all dermatologists will treat rashes. There are even specialties within dermatology that don't do that sort of thing. So we're going to next go on and see that when we start to put in the word rash, here's where the system is helping us to do auto completion. So we've typed the word RAS and rash has started to appear. And when we put in the word rash, we find that we're down to 18 physicians who are these are the ones that we will be searching for and digging through below. And we're using condition choices, we're guiding our condition choices using the taxonomy, that rash is a subset of dermatology and dermatology is a subset of specialist. So this is where the importance of taxonomy comes in. By the way, behind the scenes, what you also don't see is that with each of the physicians, we are also working down a taxonomy there. They are physicians, they are specialists, they are dermatologists, and then they treat rashes. So when we put in rash, we've got a match between the patient's complaint or condition and what the physician treats. So one other thing that you want to try to be able to do, people don't always spell things correctly. Google has this down to a science, but certainly if you can help your users by, or patients and customers by supporting their inability to spell things, that's incredibly helpful. Now that was all about the search side, the input side. Let's talk about the search results. This is an example of a reasonably good search result. We can see that the doc has the phone numbers, they've got a map, it's interactive, you can get directions. Presumably, if you click on in the middle there, top middle, Duke Primary Care, Hillsborough, you'll get more information about the practice in terms of office hours and things like that. Certainly some of that might have been able to be pulled up onto this page, but you have to be careful of how much you pull in. And also you want to be able to schedule online, and that's another important feature that you want to build into your search results. Now, the other, in the middle here, you'll see the profile, and this is Dr. Randy, and Dr. Randy has a short description of himself. It's a little folksy, but that's good because he's a family physician. He's also got a video on the right-hand side, so you can see and interact with, or at least see what how Dr. Randy presents himself, and you can say, yes, this is a physician that I think I could go to and trust. And then squeeze down on the lower left-hand side is languages that he speaks, English and fascinatingly Taiwanese. Certainly, this is this is a good search result. We might be able to think of better, but importantly, one of the things that I want to encourage you to do is get a consumer or patient panel and have them look at your search results, give you feedback on it as to what else you would want, and try and build those in. So I've got here a top 10 type thing that's going to unfold for us. So keep it simple, provide multiple filters, display the number of physicians matching each filter, offer need assistance up front, allow patients to choose what's important, use patient-friendly terms. If you go back a screen, make sure that you keep those choices, but do offer a completely start over. Offer about 10 search fields, 15 results, and multimedia will really help you. The autofills, drop downs, any sort of things that you can do to help the patient consumer with their choices, those are incredibly helpful. Don't provide nonsense results, misspelled choices, or illogical choices. For example, the elbow and the orthopedic and the sports medicine is 3 different choices really for all the same thing. And then I want to stress that using data sources that ensure completeness, accuracy, timeliness, that's absolutely critical. There's nothing worse, as you might know, getting on a consumer where you're trying to purchase something or investigate something, where you get down the line and you discover that in fact, whoops, sorry, that product's out of stock, or they don't offer it anymore, etc. Same thing with doctors. You want to make sure that the information behind your website is absolutely critical. Now, in terms of clinical taxonomy, I took you through the concept of, on the patient side, we want them to be able to speak their own language and have it drive down to map to a coded term that we can match with what the physician does in terms of the types of patients that they see. So those search tools behind the scenes, there needs to be categorization of physicians into specialties, subspecialties, and the services they offer. And on the patient side, complaints, conditions, procedures, other sorts of patient-oriented things need to be constructed into logical groupings so that we can do this matching. I strongly encourage the use of publicly available taxonomies, the American Board of Medical Specialties and others for physician and clinical specialty. SNOMED is my absolute favorite for patient complaints, procedures and conditions from a medical side. I've looked and pretty extensively, and I haven't found the equivalent of SNOMED in what I would call English language. So red skin to rash is one of my favorite examples. I don't think we've got several efforts towards that across the country, but nothing has quite caught on yet. Now, importantly, as you build your systems, you've got to be able to modify your taxonomy to fit special requirements. There are going to be regional differences, organizational differences. I'm a pediatrician. Oftentimes, pediatric genetics is not part of the Department of Pediatrics. It's part of genetics. So those are sorts of special requirements that are going to be important that you have the ability to modify. And lastly, our holy grail, at least from my perspective, is a system where it allows, in terms of pediatrics, a parent or patient to find a pediatric endocrinologist who focuses on hypothyroidism rather than diabetes, and there are those distinctions in large organizations, without having to know that they need an endocrinologist. So many of you have some sort of tool in your organization like this. It's often homegrown. And just a short blurb on why homegrown taxonomies aren't terribly effective. It tends to be taxonomy by committee. It winds up giving you the list of specialties like we saw in that initial screen. It's not structured or consistent. There are many other problems. I won't go through each one of them, but mapping is a problem. The last one, duplicates and spellings are often misspellings are often common. And in fact, it's illogic is even more common. So I just want to, I'll pass it back to Keith in a second, but I just want to, with the final words, if it's not right, searches are frustrating, care's delayed, and referrals are lost. So Keith, take us the rest of the way. Thanks very much, everybody.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Schneider, for a very detailed and thoughtful and practical deep dive. I think there are probably two takeaways from Dr. Schneider's remarks. The first is that a standard and robust taxonomy is really essential to support the optimal patient search experience. But I think it's also important to note that, as Dr. Schneider mentioned, that the clinical taxonomy is also served up and relied on and is a key resource for both clinicians who may be making a referral out of their standard trusted relationships, perhaps for an unusual condition, or if they're referring a patient to a region of the state where they may not know a specialist, or for the patient access team. We know many of you are building essentially call centers that need a reliable source of truth in the moment with a patient on the phone with a condition looking for the right provider. I think the second takeaway from Dr. Schneider's comments is, in addition to the clinical taxonomy, we'll talk a bit about our partner HealthWise and how valuable and their information is that there's just a lot of other information that's needed for that find a doctor search. I think Dr. Schneider mentioned, the term logistical, which is a very good term. That logistical information, which is just as important, that's needed for a good patient-doctor match. So let's now turn to practically how a hospital or a health system can deploy such a taxonomy to serve these three workflows on the screen and support a health system's Find a Doctor website with not only that clinical taxonomy, but also some of the other logistical information to make the patient experience better. And so one optimal strategy is to deploy a provider information management platform that includes a rich clinical taxonomy that feeds your Find a Doctor website. So we're not going to be talking here about the website design. Dr. Schneider very nicely talked about both the front end experience and also the need for a robust back end system. We're going to be focusing more on the back end and speaking about a platform. So one such platform is Find, And Find serves as a single source of truth for marketing teams to help communicate to your patients and other clinicians in the region, describing who your providers are, where your providers work, what they do, the specialty and subspecialty and clinical terms aspect, to what networks they serve. And we maintain this multi-dimensional view of all of your providers, and it supports both the front office system, so obviously your patient websites, the patient access, your network management teams, which have to somehow maintain the affiliations of doctors, and the enrollment process, as well as the back-end systems that also rely on other aspects of provider information, the care coordination teams, the discharge planning teams, and the revenue cycle teams. And Find as a platform is designed to support the systems that each of these teams rely on with high quality and complete provider information. So the way that Find does this is that we synthesize that provider data, transform it, and then share it to the marketing, referral management, patient access, and other teams. And we use a combination of intelligent software and provide curation workflows in a robust data model to help these various teams keep that provider information up to date. We start with a synthesis process, which begins prior to a customer going live. So what we do is we extract provider data from your existing systems, such as an EHR system or a credentialing system, and then we enrich that data with information from our own national provider network, which is a repository of 4 million providers. These are doctors, PAs, nurses, basically anyone who needs a license to practice in the health system. The NPN includes the NPI, DEA, state licensing information. We then transform that data by normalizing the data and then cleaning it. And then once Find is live and feeding and communicating with other systems within the health system, we update these profiles continuously via regular feeds from our national provider network to ensure you've got the most up-to-date information. We connect with your credentialed system. We're not a credentialing system, but we accept information from your credentialing system. The credentialing systems have a small subset of the larger data that we maintain in our system. So as you credential new providers, or as privilege information changes, or God forbid sanctions information may occur, we receive those updates via a regular integration. And we offer a one-touch provider enrollment so that staff can add new referring providers while the patient's in the office, or if you're admitting a patient that has a referring clinician not in your system, we allow an immediate enrollment so that you don't have to create a record with incomplete information. So we're gonna walk a little bit through some of the other capabilities of Find, starting with what we call a Find profile. So who your providers are. So what we hear in talking with large health systems such as yours is that most of the departments I've mentioned in your health system maintain some list of provider data that helps them perform the function that they're doing, whether it's admissions or claims processing or discharge planning. And we hear time and again that information may live in a spreadsheet or a Microsoft Access database or a Word document. We know one of our customers is a health system in the Southeast that has 80 systems that contain provider information that will eventually be subsumed by Find, that will replace these. And so the core element of the Find platform is that there is a single profile for each provider across your health system. And that Find profile supports over 200 individual data points. Some were the ones that Dr. Schneider showed you in that website, which I think had some good information. And if you look on the screenshot, you can see that there's a number of dimensions. I mentioned the multidimensional nature of a Find provider profile. They can use to maintain details of providers ranging from languages to qualifications to the health plans they accept. There are pencil icons and add buttons to allow you to edit any of these fields, assuming you have privileges to do so. And one element, given the fact that the Find platform is in the business, so to speak, of maintaining high quality provider information. You'll notice that there's a green box on the upper right corner of the screen that says your Find Health score. And the Find score is a customer specific measure of completeness. It's a formula that we maintain every profile in your system. Every provider gets a score, and it's a way of making sure that we and you are maintaining an acceptable quality threshold based upon the completeness of the profile. So, what your providers do? So, we're going to talk a bit about a little more about clinical taxonomy and promoting as marketeers on the call. You know that promoting your 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 providers to your patients, your referring providers, and the patient access teams is no easy task given the number of providers to reach and the complexity and the organizational structure. So job number one is to have a complete view of your providers. And as Dr. Schneider alluded to, it's cumbersome to build a clinical expertise library from scratch. Getting 23 department heads of 23 lines of service to agree on a taxonomy is like herding cats. And then having built this taxonomy, trying to match your 5,000 doctors to this taxonomy is an even greater unscalable effort. So we make it easy, and we've decided to make it easy by partnering with Healthwise, a beautiful Boise, which is our partner, and some intelligence software we built. So a little background on why Find has partnered with Healthwise. So Healthwise is a leader in providing clinical content. They're a not-for-profit founded in 1975 with a simple mission, which is to help people make better health decisions with better information. And so their primary responsibility is to serve the interests of consumers. And so health plans, health systems and hospitals, care management companies, and portals and websites use their content, which includes evidence-based, easy to understand health education, technology solutions, and integrate with your EHRs, your Epic and Cerner, and then guidance on approaches to behavior change, because of course a lot of care plans are based upon trying to help the patient maybe make some life decisions. But an interesting byproduct of Healthwise's work is that they created, to curate this incredible repository of content, was a creation of a method to organize that content to make it readily searchable through an ontology or a structure of specialty, subspecialty, clinical terms, and also patient-friendly terms. So we are pleased to partner with Healthwise to use this robust clinical content. And so we use that structure along with our own proprietary, you might call it some AI-based software that helps to map providers against this Healthwise standard to basically map to lines of service groups, and clinical terms. And so the benefit of having this taxonomy and this matching software is that for the first time you have this complete and always accurate representation of your health system's full capabilities. So as you're marketing, again, as marketeers, we're marketing our health system through channels we provide for a better experience. We also talked, I think Dr. Schneider alluded, as part of looking for a provider for his wife with the red skin, was that knowing where your providers work is critical in supporting effective patient search. And so we have a location management capability which helps you manage location profiles. So which providers work in each of these locations, their specialties, subspecialties, their networks they're in, the procedures, the tests, and other services that are offered at that location. Language translation services. We saw a doctor in North Carolina that speaks Taiwanese. In urban areas, obviously, New York City, where I live, there's 180 different languages spoken, so you need to know that. Driving instructions, hours, parking, provider ratings, these are all curated in the location management module. You can represent your system's governance structure. You can designate locations as standalone entities, part of a group practice, part of a health system, and then you assign these providers to each of the locations and designate the privileges they have. So this location management dimension is another leg of the stool that ensures that as part of your find a doc matching, just as you're finding the right clinician for the case, as Dr. Schneider mentioned, but the right provider that's convenient to the patient. So another dimension of a profile is the challenge that marketing teams, brethren, the network management team, your sister organization, there's this obviously proliferation of accountable care organizations, clinically integrated networks, health plans, employer now networks is happening. The average provider participates in over 20 health networks or other networks. So if you in marketing are frustrated by the content management system that is under your website, you'll feel a bit better knowing that your peers in network management, the state of the art for managing your 5,000 providers across these 20 relationships is ding, 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 a spreadsheet. So Fine's, health plan, network plan capabilities are designed to maintain all of those affiliations of providers with health plans and health networks in a single place. We make that health plan information accessible. Here's Dr. Walling on the screen showing the various plans that she's accepting or not accepting in plans. So the network health plan module helps associate what plans each provider takes, what plans are accepted, what subplans, accepting patient status, and if there are sub-tiers, Blue Cross has 4 sub-networks. The health plan module shows that association as well. So we're gonna move on to take some of your questions in a second. I want to just highlight a couple of our customers' successes. So one of the customers who is driving their website Find a Doctor search is Duke Health, which is considered by many to be, certainly U.S. News and World Report, as one of the top health systems in the U.S. It's the #1 ranked. Its flagship hospital is the #1 ranked hospital. #1 ranked hospital in North Carolina. Duke was, as I think many of you are probably in the middle of, had embarked on a major consumer-oriented healthcare initiative. We're hearing, more and more health systems following a clinical or consumer transformation initiative as a way to improve patient satisfaction and network reach. And before Find, health systems, such as Duke, had issues with the quality. They try to maintain all that information on a website, such as the information Dr. Schneider talked about. In particular, the Find a Doc search capability, could always be better. So we helped Duke to integrate their Find a Doctor website to their Epic system and their Echo credentialing management system. We connected that website to our Find platform to update it regularly via an API to push any updates from any of those systems that came through Find. One other dimension that we helped with was that as part of its consumer transformation initiative, Find was very interested in supporting self-scheduling. So Epic, as we know, is one of the EHR vendors that has a very powerful scheduling system. So we work with Duke to build a little scheduling applet so that patients can click through the applet once they come up with a doctor on the website that subscribes to online scheduling. So the patients simply click through that little applet to go directly into the open slots on a doctor's schedule. And we believe this capability is allowed Duke to see significant increases in the patient satisfaction and to reduce the no-shows and just in general support better patient matching. So another customer who is using the Find platform with success is Yale New Haven Health, another health system consistently ranked. They're in the top 10 in the U.S. in 9 different lines of service capabilities. So before Find, maintaining the large provider population in Yale was a sort of a massive challenge. As you can see, Yale has a large network, almost 80,000 regional providers, and they're closing in on almost 2,000 locations. It was, Epic, again, a very powerful system, but maintaining information in Epic is very manual. So you send a ticket to the Epic SER team, the Epic SER team opens up Epic, makes changes. And so Yale was looking for a strategy to maintain a verified database of credential and referring providers kept up to date. So they integrated Epic and Morrissey into Find. And in Yale's own words, there's a recent Q&A document that's out on that Yale has made available that says that Find is currently considered the source of truth for provider contact information for Epic and across the Yale health system. They've seen significant improvements in cost turnaround time, reducing those tickets that go to the Epic SER team by 90%, which has made the Epic team very happy. they've seen more timely updates to address changes for those 2,000 locations. And they will be then looking forward to using FIND for information in the EPIC DEP file, which is a sort of the equivalent of a location master, syncing the DEP data with the SER data to help with other aspects of patient quality, patient data quality, or provider data quality, excuse me. So we'll just close with some commentary by another customer that uses FIND. This is UNC, which is another good customer of ours across the street from Duke, as it turns out. And they, as you can see from Brent's comments as the deputy CIO, that they rely on FIND for information needed as a single source of truth. So with that, we're going to move to the Q&A aspect. If anyone has any questions, feel free to send them to me. I've got my email address shown on the screen, and I'm going to pass it back to Lori if there are questions that are out in another space, and we'd be happy to take those.
Thank you, Keith. As a reminder to the audience, use the questions section in the GoToWebinar panel to submit your questions to Keith and Dr. Schneider. The first question, Jen would like to know if any studies have been done to learn what percentage of patients actually understand what condition to search for.
This is Joe Schneider, and Lori, I'll take that question. First, it's excellent. I do want, since this is a taped webinar, I do want to correct one thing that Keith said. The picture that you saw was not my wife; that was my mother.
Did I say that?
Yeah. We're all in the same room here, and we're having a good time. All right. So this is a fascinating and excellent question. So the question is, have we done studies to learn the percentage of patients that actually understand what condition to search for? The answer to that is the FIND crew has not. There's a number of studies in the literature that talk about assisting the ability of patients to figure out what's wrong with them. And I don't have those handy, but we'll do later. I'll do some digging, and I'll get them to Lori and crew at his talk. It actually, though, brings up a more important point, which is if we're going to get to the point where we have patient engagement, consumer engagement, we really have to make the things a whole lot friendlier. I was just reading a study this morning about taking radiology reports and converting them into patient understandable language. The general category of things is called a consumer health vocabulary, and there's been a number of efforts in those areas to try to make terms much more understandable. That work had been out of the University of Utah, and I think there's it sort of gets energy and sort of loses energy probably as funding occurs. But I do want to, I know that on the webinar there's a number of folks from different organizations that are in this space, and I would strongly urge you, just like SNOMED provides our clinical terms, to consolidate your efforts to make consumer health vocabulary something that we can all contribute to, so that it's much more powerful. No, the quick answer, no. Patients oftentimes miscategorize their systems. In the case of my mother, she initially said to me that she had a red eye instead of red skin. That's where we want to use some augmented intelligence as time goes on to really help consumer patients get to a much better description of what they've got. So thank you very much. And Lori, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Dr. Schneider. The next question, can you talk a little bit about how long an average implementation takes from kickoff to go live? This person is asking about Duke as an example.
That's great. Well, so first of all, apologies to Dr. Schneider. He is both a beautiful wife and a beautiful mother, and obviously both beautiful ladies. And I apologize. That was clearly Dr. Schneider's mother. And in a follow-on presentation, we'll have a picture of Dr. Schneider's wife. So I can speak in general terms that there is, as an enterprise platform, the dimensions that contribute to the length of a deployment, which is typically in the 5 to 6 month range. Obviously, depend upon the number of systems that we're connecting to, but in general, given the steps that we talked about in the synthesize and transform and share are about 5 to 6 months. But obviously, mileage may vary. We'd obviously want to understand the number of systems that and the workflows that you want to be deploying.
Can you talk a little bit about how big the HealthWise database of terms, conditions, et cetera is?
Sure. There's well over 20,000 terms at this point, and many of them have the patient-friendly terms with them. This is Dr. Schneider. I know, again, there are other organizations on the call, and I'll repeat that pitch. Sharing this so that we all don't have to rediscover the wheel, I think that's a terribly important point, but it's big.
And this is a follow-up to that one. Are the HealthWise terms mapped with their educational tools?
Yes, absolutely. That's a very important point, that so that when a patient selects something, there's actually educational material behind it to help them understand both what it is, and actually getting to the very first question is to help them understand, do they really have that condition? Thanks.
Next question, how does Find share information with other systems in a health system? Like, how does it interact with a credentialing system or the EHR, for example?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there's both a technical question in there and a sort of a functional business question in there. So the typical systems that we connect with are the EHR and the credentialing management system. The credentialing teams are hard-working folks that focus on a very specific set of data. And for us, Find is the credentialing information is typically an input for us. So the feed or connectivity with the credentialing management system is typically one way from an Echo or a Morrissey to Find. Although we do have a couple of customers who look for a feedback to the credentialing management system. And I would also say that there are different ways to set how data is accepted. That is, feeds can be automatic, where if you have a source of truth like the credentialing management system, it feeds Find. Feeds from the credentialing management system from Find can be automatic without any curation by folks. In other instances, for example, we typically connect two-way to a Cerner or an Epic. The feed from Epic or Cerner, a health system may wish to have that information pushed to be reviewed by a human to make sure that that information is correct. So we connect certainly to those two classes of systems. Obviously, for health systems that are looking to improve the patient experience of the website, we connect to a website. We connect in two ways. We can connect to a website's content management system, such as Drupal, which is typically a one-way push to that system. There are also ways to connect the website live through an API directly to our repository. If you're a health system that doesn't want to have a content management system and wants to use Find directly, you can connect the website to Find. In terms of the more technical aspect of the question, we have a RESTful API which we use. We also have HL7 connectivity. We have some customers who use more of a flat file connectivity. We also have, given the fact we connect to 50 states and have the feeds for licensing information, we get that feed in various forms, including a CD sent to us or a spreadsheet, and we can update that in information. So the short answer is we'll support really any integration methodology, no matter what the degree of robustness and response time.
Can you talk a little bit about how providers are mapped to the HealthWise Find taxonomy? And whether or not they're able to manage their associations themselves?
Absolutely. So first of all, we do an initial mapping of providers based upon information we get from our national provider network. We then do an additional mapping using some secret sauce we built against the HealthWise taxonomy to do a codification or a crosswalk, if you will, of those particular specialties and subspecialties and clinical terms. Obviously, we provide tools that allow a provider that is an authorized person who can get into Dr. Schneider's profile. We have very strict governance, which again we set up on a health system, individual health system basis, so that if a person if it's Dr. Schneider or his authorized assistant, can go in and make those particular changes at the individual level. There, you may be offering that capability to service line directors within a health system or a practice manager at a specialty office to provide it. We also provide a series of tools to proactively reach out. We have a campaign management tool, which we haven't talked about in the health system in our review of FIND, that allows essentially a person to send out email asks of specific sets or subsets of providers, again by lines of service or by practice. Hey, can you, and a practice manager may get that email and can go in and update any sort of information, not only the specialty and subspecialty, but again, as we've talked a bit about, that network associations and affiliations are constantly changing. And so that campaign management tool, which is used inside FIND, can reach out to authorized folks who have access to the profile to make changes on a continuous or irregular basis as they wish.
Thank you. Karen would like to know how this is used to scrub and keep accurate the SER file in Epic.
So that's a good question. So we have a two-way feed to Epic, and if the information is going from the Epic SER file to FIND, as I mentioned, the information can either be can be moved automatically into FIND. If the information, conversely, recognizing that FIND would find any department person can have their hands on FIND, and so you might have a marketing person who is got a physician liaison who went out to a practice, brought their laptop, made some changes that fed back to FIND that Dr. Schneider is now in the Now network that's serving Walmart. That information goes back to FIND, and that feedback from FIND to the Epic SDR file. I'm assuming typically, given that Epic has fairly stringent controls on the SER file, but you can set up that feed from FIND back to the Epic SER file to be an automated feed that automatically updates that file level, that field level information, or it could be manually curated. It can be an Epic SER team member may go into FIND and it has a work list, and the work list is constantly checked on by an SER team member and can update that information. And again, there's various methods of integration that can be used to support an Epic integration.
Okay, our last question, what tools are used to allow providers to update their profile settings?
Yes, so essentially the organizational principle is a profile, and a profile, I think I had a slide here that showed that maybe I'll go back to it, that allows you to go into a particular detail. So this would be a screen that you would go to, and if you wanted to update, for example, specialties for some reason, pediatric endocrinology was not a subspecialty for a doctor, they would simply click on the subspecialty, and if they had privileges, they would be presented, a list of subspecialties. A doctor would simply scroll to pediatric endocrinology, click on it, save it, and then when you open up Dr. Schneider's profile again, you would see pediatric endocrinology listed. So it's really off this screen, the provider detail screen, in combination with having the privilege to be able to access and make changes to a particular field that gives it gives someone the ability to do it.
Thank you. As I said, that was our last question, so this concludes the webinar. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Dr. Schneider and Keith, for the interesting and engaging presentation. As a reminder to attendees, watch your email for links to the recording of today's webinar, as well as the PDF version of the PowerPoint presentation. We look forward to seeing you at our next HIS Talk webinar, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.